Subscribe our channel and press the bell icon for watching more video.
In this section, we will talk about outline agreements. What are outline agreements? These are short-term and long-term agreements with the vendor to supply goods under certain conditions. We'll understand what those conditions are and why we need to do them. Basically, there are two types of outline agreements, and we are going to see both those types. But before we go into the types of outline agreements, let's understand why we need to get into an agreement with the vendor. So far, we have been procuring coffee, flour, sugar, all different kinds of stuff that we need for our business. We have been procuring them for the Chicago plant. This is my Chicago plant. And if I expand my business, I could do more plants in Chicago. Chicago 2, Chicago 3, so on, right? I could establish more coffee plants in different parts of Chicago or spread out into Illinois, the state. Or I could establish a shop in San Francisco. It depends on where my business leads me. Now, let's say I'm still headquartered in Chicago, but I have shops in multiple places in Chicago and in multiple states as well, right? Say I have 10 shops, 5 shops in Chicago and 5 shops in San Francisco. Now, sitting in Chicago, I'm procuring goods for Chicago as well as San Francisco, right? And I'm doing this from the purchase org US01. That's the purchase org for which I maintain the prices, I maintain vendors, I maintain all the different data that's required for procurement. Now, this assumes that I'm doing procurement for all these different shops that I have or plants that I have, assuming each shop is one plant. It need not be that, but let's assume that for simplicity, right? All the procurement is done from Chicago using purchase org US01. What does that mean? That means it's one centralized purchasing area for all the shops and plants that I have. So this mode of doing purchasing is called centralized purchasing. Centralized purchasing. As opposed to what? You could do something like this. You could have one purchase org US01 to cater to the needs of all the Chicago plant purchasing, and you could have US02, another purchase org responsible for procuring for all the San Francisco plants. This is called decentralized purchasing. Centralized purchasing, decentralized purchasing. Now, the next obvious question is, what are the advantages of one over the other? And when do we do centralized versus when do we do decentralized purchasing? We do centralized purchasing when high volumes bring better prices. Simple, right? High volumes of business bring in better prices. That's how Walmart works. They procure in high volumes, they get better margins and pass the savings over to the consumer, and the consumer gets better prices, right? Now, in some industries, it does not work that way. So niche industries and very technology-oriented industries might not work that way. But overall, though, in general, for most conventional industries, centralized purchasing is always better because you get better margins when you go with higher procurement volume. Let me give you an example. Say every week, Chicago is procuring, say, 100 kilos or pounds of coffee every week. Okay, that means over a course of 4 weeks, it's going to procure 400 pounds. per month, and multiplied by 12 equals 4,800 kilos per annum. Now, if I have 5 plants like that, I'm going to say it's going to be roughly around 25,000 kilos per year, right? That's not a small volume, but 4,800 might not be such a big volume, right? So if US01 were to only procure for Chicago, at best, we're going to procure a maximum of 25,000 kilos per year of coffee, just coffee. And this guy says San Francisco also procures 25,000 kilos per year. Combined together, we have a volume of 50,000 per year. So 50,000 is obviously a much bigger volume than 25,000. But what does this volume get us? Now, when we have bigger volumes like this, we can negotiate better terms with the vendor. Now, I'm not just saying price, I'm saying better terms, because terms could mean better price, better shipping, better payment terms, any of these. Now let's see how a typical negotiation happens, and what are the tools that the purchasing manager has to do this negotiation. So the purchasing manager sitting in Chicago calls up the vendor 4001 and says, I want to negotiate better prices. Can we sit together? All right. He either comes over to our plant or we go to the vendor's place. And before going there, the purchasing manager prints out a sheet from SAP. It's called as the buyer's negotiation sheet. SAP by default provides a buyer's negotiation sheet, but there could also be custom programs to print the negotiation sheet the way the purchasing manager wants it. Okay. So what is this negotiation sheet? We go to logistics, material management, purchasing. Under master data, info record, there's something called as a buyer's negotiation sheet. What is a buyer's negotiation sheet? So it gives a history of all the materials, their volumes, their prices purchased from a particular vendor or by material. Now, let's look at the sheet by vendor, because we have called vendor 4001 ABC Foods for negotiation. So click on by vendor and say 4001, and purchase org is US01. Right? And you could specify a material, or you need not, because if you want to negotiate only for a particular material, you could do that. And if not, you could say all materials, right? And output on screen, click OK. So this is a sample buyer's negotiation sheet. It need not always be this way. This is something that SAP provides out of the box. Okay, so what does it say? It says these are our payments for the that we do for the vendor. These are the total amount of POs that has been purchased, 9,120, and then the materials that we have purchased from this vendor. So far we have procured 710 pounds, and the total price is $6,900, and the delivery time is 5 days. The last order price is $875, right? So things like this. This is a different material, coffee bean 03. So we didn't select a material, right? So it's giving us a list of all the materials procured from this vendor, at what prices they've been procured, what is the total that we have been procuring from day one, if we specify a date range, it will give us all the procurement happening within that date. If not, it defaults all the way from the beginning. So what does this sheet give us? So if I'm the purchasing manager, I take a printout of this, go sit with the vendor and say, hey, you know what? I've been procuring 700 pounds and I've spent $7,000 or $6,800 on procuring coffee from you. And I'm going to open 3 more shops, or I have opened 5 more shops already, and the volume is going to go up by so much. And the price that we are doing currently is so much. And now my request is I want a better price. The more volume you do, the better price you can negotiate. Think of Walmart. So here is me, the purchasing manager. And here is the vendor, 4001, ABC Foods. And I take a copy of the buyer's negotiation sheet, which has the list of products and all the prices and the total volumes. Like, I've procured 710 pounds and the total I've spent is $7,000, right? So the buyer's negotiation sheet helps me, have the stats right when I talk to the vendor. Now, like I said, we're going to open more shops, right? That means we need more volume. So I'm going to ask the vendor to reduce the price because I'm going to procure, say, 50,000 pounds of coffee in the next year or in the next 6 months. Now let's switch places and think about the vendor. Now, what is the vendor thinking? Now, this guy is doing more volumes. That means sustainable business for me with this company, coffee shop. So what can I offer him without losing my advantage, right? So vendors typically offer 2 types of terms. The first type of tool that vendors have in their negotiation is called as a contract. The second kind of tool is called as a scheduling agreement. Both are roughly similar, not much different. Just focus on contract. What is a contract? We have been into contracts, right? An iPhone is expensive. So you enter into a contract with AT&T and get it at a reduced price, say a monthly price of $30 or $40. But the contract obliges you to pay the same amount for a period of 12 months or 24 months, right? So you are basically, as a customer, committing to a particular volume, a volume of 24 months of cell phone service, and along with that you get the product, which is the iPhone, for free or for a lower price. Similarly, when you think of this transaction from the vendor's perspective, he would want you, the coffee shop, to enter into a contract. And a contract may typically look something like this. Currently, the price is, say, $10 per pound or kilo. I am willing to go down on it, say by $9, provided you procure 50,000 pounds per year. Simple enough, right? This is typically a win-win for both. The vendor gets a consistent high volume, and I'm not going to go to 4,002, which is XYZ Foods, because I committed to 50,000 pounds per year of purchases from this vendor. This vendor, ABC Foods, can agree to lower the price by $1 per pound, and still he would make margins. Another type of agreement is, say, I don't just procure coffee from 4001, I also procure dairy creamer, I also procure cups, I procure sugar, I procure flour, in which case I don't have to limit this contract to just 50,000 pounds of coffee per year. I could say, do a business of, say, 500,000 per year, dollars per year. And it could be anything. It could be coffee, it could be flour, it could be sugar. And with that volume, I'm going to give you coffee at $9 per pound, sugar at dollar, say the regular price is 4, and I'm going to give you at $3 per pound, so on and so forth. So these are the two major types of contracts that vendors and companies get into. This kind of contract is called a quantity contract, and this is called a value contract. So two types of contracts: quantity contract, value contract. So let's quickly go through what we have learned here. Our business has been growing, and we have started putting more plants in Chicago, meaning more shops in Chicago, the coffee shops. And there could be another purchasing manager sitting in the San Francisco plant, and he could be procuring for the San Francisco shops, and another one in the Chicago shops. That mode of purchasing is called decentralized purchasing. An alternative to it is centralized purchasing, where one purchase org is responsible for procuring for multiple plants. Chicago, San Francisco, any other cities that we open our shops. And what's the advantage of centralized purchasing? Because centralized purchasing increases volumes, because all shops are going to be purchasing from one single window, right? So you can negotiate better terms. By better terms, we meant better price, better shipping terms, better payment terms, better Incoterms, any of those. Anything that is advantageous to the company. One of the tools that the purchasing manager has is called as a buyer's negotiation sheet, which is a report out of SAP that just gives you accumulated lists of volumes and values. How much we have been procuring from this date until this date. It's just a tool to negotiate with the vendor. And now, from a vendor's perspective, because we are offering increased volumes in sales, vendors typically tend to go for a contract with us. So, contract could mean committing to more volume or committing to more value. When you commit to more volume, it's called quantity contract. When you commit to more value, it's called value contract. In the next chapter, we'll create quantity and value contracts in SAP and see how we can proceed further with these contracts.